Everything, everything gonna be all right this morning.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, off to the races once again for another episode of It's Me Speaking to You. Boy, oh boy, have we had some issues linking up today, but here we are. We had originally set out to talk to a couple of the participants over there at Polestar Pictures, both Joe Sabatino and John Rain. Joe Sabatino being the executive vice president of production and finance, but I don't know, Skype's not liking me today, but we do have John Rain, who is the president and founder of Polestar Pictures, who's going to be chopping it up with us today. John, how are we doing, my friend?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I can't complain, but we have you here, and looking forward to chopping up with you, man. How is this Hallows Eve? Actually, it's not Hallows Eve. How is this Halloween treating you over there on the East Coast?
Good old Sam Hain Day. It's kind of chilly, a little bit drizzly outside, but we don't really participate in the events. We just kind of sit back and chill out in the house.
Nothing wrong with that, and that's the very similar vibe we have going over here in St. Louis. A rather drizzly day. Obviously, the leaves are turning the whole nine, rather getting kind of cool. The weather's finally turning on us, but we have quite a bit to talk about, man. You've got some really cool things going on over at Polestar Pictures. I always love a good origin story, and I obviously wanted to pick your brain on you and Joe on how things kind of got started for you. You both have a ridiculous resume of your time spent in the entertainment industry, film, TV production, etc., and it has all come together, and you guys have put an incredible team together over there at Polestar. But for you, since I have you here, you've been in and out of all different aspects of the game here, but when did the bug bite you to get into the TV production film game?
Oh, okay, yeah. Let me address that, but let me correct something in the beginning here,
Sure.
Where you called me the president, and since I originally founded Polestar Pictures about 8 years ago, where I switched it over from Rainstorm Productions.
Oh, okay.
And that has grown into what it is today. And, it's not about the title. Like, we each have our own specialties in what we're doing with Polestar. And it's really the guys that are driving this is Joe Sabatino, Mark Weiss, Larry Mealy, and Dan Lopez. I'm really just the creative guy.
Okay.
Behind. And so I don't consider myself a president of the company. There's 5 principals in the company at this point, and between the 5 of us, we kind of drive Polestar where it needs to go. But as far as business goes, I let these guys take the helms because, well, their reputations speak for themselves.
Yeah, and if you go on the website, polestarpictures.com, you'll see the numerous accolades that all of these guys have in the game. And big shout-outs and thanks to Mark Weiss for facilitating getting us together today. But, in totality, the whole thing's been around for 27 years. And in that time, well, I guess I didn't let you answer that first question, or how you kind of got started in the game.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, a friend of mine, I was going through a bit of a slump with myself. And they says, John, you got to get out of your slump. What do you want to do? And I said, I never made a movie before. And so they said, well, we'll finance you if you want to make a movie. So I was like, really? And that's honestly how I got started.
And the rest is history. And you have a little background in Elvis impersonation. Is that correct, sir?
Well, yeah, my life in entertainment is kind of like Forrest Gump. I never really set out to do anything. The only thing I can remember that I ever wanted to really do was I wanted to be Evel Knievel, and I was riding bikes and jumping things, and that was it. But the chain of events that happened in my life, I kind of fumbled into everything that happened to me. And that's the honest truth. I mean, I stumbled into the Elvis thing. I stumbled into the magic thing. I stumbled into promoting. So it was just kind of like events that I guess were meant to happen in my life that led me to today.
Well, and the magic thing you're referring to is working with the illustrious and very accomplished Doug Henning back in the day. Doug Henning, I remember, I think it was 5th or 6th grade. We had to write a letter to a celebrity or something, and I wrote a letter to him, and he wrote me back, and I forget what he'd sent with it, but if it was even him who wrote me back. But yeah, Doug Henning, man.
I'm sure it was. Doug was a very warm, caring individual, and I miss him dearly. He really had a sense of what magic was all about, and he felt that there was a real magic that existed somewhere. So
yeah.
I was honored and really blessed to be able to work with him for a little bit.
Well, and that's kind of, I mean, I think that's always really cool when we have, as Bob Ross calls, the happy accidents in life, where it's like you think it's going to be planned from, this linear 0 to this place, and so often in life it just takes us in different places. That's why I always find those kind of stories so very interesting, where I planned to go here, but like you said, almost Forrest Gumpish, it just took on a completely different, but that's a cool thing, because like here you are now, working with these guys, and we're going to talk about some of the big announcements you guys have coming up. What are some of the things that you would say, distinguish Polestar from, I mean, and with this, how is the game changing? It seems like the film industry is changing so much. Obviously, with COVID, nobody was going to theaters, but how Polestar is kind of differentiated from other studios, as well as having to adapt to the different needs of the film game now, because streaming, all these different platforms, where not only movies, where you got all these series that you could sit and watch for days and days, and how is the game changing, and how is Polestar adapting to that?
Well, Polestar was an independent production company, and whenever you hear the word indie, it is synonymous with no money, and that's basically what Polestar was. I mean, it was very low budget to no budget films, and when you've made as many films as I have, you really get to learn how to work around no budgets, including scripts. You begin writing scripts to fit no budget, and how you can make that happen. So that experience has brought me into the realm of major motion pictures, where they come at me and, they find it hard to believe that we can do a picture for $1 million and really make it stand out, where they're spending, $40-50 million. So that's one of the big things that we have to advantage is being based here in Pennsylvania, in a community that supports us and is behind us, and helps us out economically to produce these pictures. I think that's really what really separates us right now.
Well, yeah, you can kind of take, and streamlining the operation, obviously, as I had seen Joe Sabatino talk about on the website, from locations. There's so many different ways, as a producer, you want to come in as under the budget as possible, but I think that's a very cool MO you guys have to kind of streamline you guys' operations, keep it local. And like he had said in that video, you guys get a lot of certain things kind of gifted to you to help deficit some of the cost of making the film. And with all of you guys' experience involved, having those kind of attributes, and then you're like distribution, it's, you guys are really being able to, like you said, pump out stuff for way cheaper than other studios can do.
Absolutely. And bringing somebody like Joe on board, it's just, wow. That was just like a big event when that happened. And I can remember how excited I was to have Joe, say, hey, I want to be involved with this. And I think my response was, hell yeah, right away. I want you involved with this. He's been in well over like 100 television and film credits. I know he was the co-executive producer of Necessary Roughness.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and he really has become a dear friend in the time that I've gotten to know him so far, and he's also been a mentor with me on what the real business side of this is like, because he's been dealing with major studios, major producers. And he looked at my script and was like, maybe we should do this and maybe we should do that. And he's constantly driving me to do it even bigger and better. And that's the one thing that I really love about Joe, that he's always trying to make it even bigger.
And it's really good. You know, it's like anything, assembling the right team is so very crucial. And I think having somebody, from what you're saying, like getting somebody like a Joe involved helps get kind of people out of their comfort zone to, like you said, be bigger than what maybe you thought it could be. And it's especially like something like a film crew and a film studio and that kind of hierarchy, because, you know, the sky's the limit, and you could easily be used to like, no, we're just going to make this like little small budget movie and it's going to go direct to DVD or whatever. And that's kind of your comfort zone. But then you bring in the right people to help you think a little bigger than what you thought it could possibly be. And then here you are, you know, doing some of the things you're doing with some of the growth with the company that's, you know, we're going to talk about here in a few minutes.
Yeah. Well, you know, that was kind of like my thing that got me out of what I was doing to what I'm doing now, because I've spent 27 years of making low budget horror films that were easy to make and they're easy to market. But what is the market? The market is very limited digital platforms, and, you know, everybody goes to Amazon. And once you get there, it's kind of like, okay, now what? Because you don't have a budget to advertise what you're doing or promote what you're doing. So even if you have a gem of an idea and a good product, it's still just thrown out there with hundreds of thousands of others, and the chance of being seen is really rare.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I really got tired of. I got tired of putting all this time and effort into these films, and then the distribution on them was what I just described to you. So I can remember we were going to do another horror film, and we were right down to the wire to do it. And I called up my partner at that time, Tom Stoops, who's a very good friend of mine. And I said, I'm not doing it. He was like, I think he had a heart attack on the phone. He says, what do you mean? We got the film guys coming tomorrow and everything. I said, I'm not doing it. He says, why not? I said, because we got to step up our game. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I have this drama. And he was, drama? Right out of his mouth, drama. And I said, yeah, I think this is what we need to do. So everybody was against me with the idea of doing this drama. It was a story I wrote 20-some years ago about a Vietnam veteran. And taking care of a handicapped brother was a reflection of my own brother in my own life. And that's what we went for. We did it. And I can remember we were on set. We built a trailer, the interior of a trailer in an old mortuary that we got to use. So we built the interior of this trailer in this mortuary, and we filmed the very first scenes, and people were actually on set breaking down and crying. And I knew at that point in time we had something.
Wow.
Well, that went on to win the Hollywood Silver Screen Award for Best Picture of 2019. I was also nominated for Best Actor in that film. And we made it into the Hollywood Times over Oscar weekend, which got us into a lot of, prominent people's homes that were seeing about us and hearing about us for the first time. And that was the road that started paving us upward right there.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And I totally can relate to that, because it's like, I always use the phrase, I stole it from this, well, whatever. It's podcasting is kind of the same way, where you're talking about you got $100 bills on sale for a nickel, but nobody knows it. You know, you put all that work into doing what you're doing, and it's just, and again, with podcasting, there's an ocean of podcasts out here, and I don't mind it. Everyone start a podcast, because same with movies, same with TV shows, the free market, like the good ones will rise to the top. So we shouldn't curtail people's creative juices to doing movies, et cetera. And that's the other thing. There's a certain genre. My youngest daughter, she's 15. She's really into horror movies. And we just, like last weekend, we were kind of flipping through what we wanted to see. And I showed her the trailer to The Reanimator. I think it's like a 1980s, like old 80s, horror flick, kind of campy, kind of kitschy. But I always loved a lot of the old school special effects, the Fangoria type stuff. Because, CG's kind of made horror movies a little different now. But, I mean, anyway, I think there's still a good market for those kind of kitschy, kind of B horror flicks. because they're very they're very entertaining, quite frankly. They're not meant to be
Right.
Shawshank Redemption, etc. But I mean, there's definitely a certain appeal to it, and I mean, I think you guys have done a great job kind of filling that role. But like you said, kind of off air, you don't want to necessarily just stay in the horror realm and the horror genre. Going to the one you just talked about, the Vietnam element and the kind of a little bit more deeper story element. Where's Polestar going today? And if you can speak to that kind of the big announcement that you made a week or so ago on the direction and some of the upcoming projects that you guys have going on.
Well, where we're headed right now is, of course, another horror film. But this horror film started two and a half years ago under the title Evergreen is the Blood. It was another story that I wrote a long time ago. And it was during COVID, when COVID hit, and nobody was doing anything, and my crew was getting antsy. And I says, well, let's go ahead and do this film. I have this vampire film. It's very isolated. It's got two main characters, and we could have a lot of fun with it. So that's how it started. Well, as soon as I announced we were doing that film, I literally got besieged with actors and people that wanted to participate in the film, which excited me because I thought, okay, wow, now we can do something, really big during COVID. Well, it got out of hand, and the script, it was effects driven and not story driven. And when I filmed it all and we got it all done, and I went back and even did some reshoots, I can remember calling up the producers, and I was like, this sucks. I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to put out another cheesy horror flick like this. And I canned it, and I thought everybody was going to hate me. But they didn't. They actually got excited about it. And that's where Mark came in, Mark Weiss, who's been a good friend of mine for at least 10 years now. And he was involved with me with this. And he says, well, what do you want to do to it? What can we do? And I said, we need to step back and take a look at the whole script and bring this back into story instead of just how many people we can kill and how many effects we can cram into 90 minutes. And he agreed with that. So we started the rewrites back then. And one thing led to another. Joe came on board, and it just grew. We changed the name because the whole concept of the film changed. The characterization of the vampires changed, and it just got big. The storyline now is Indiana Jones meets the Da Vinci Code meets a grand vampire story. There's real depth and meaning to our story. There's a lot more than just vampires here.
Substance over style.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about, the niche market out there for these low budget horror films, I got nothing against them. I get them myself. But I just wanted to rise above that because I felt, especially at my age and where I've come, I wanted to do something better. And after just winning the Silver Screen Award, I didn't want to go backwards.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, I wanted to leap forward a little bit. A lot of people that were involved with film got harsh with me about it. It's just the nature of the business. And, I had to get by that and move on to where we're at now. So for the last 2 years, we've been redeveloping, repitching, bringing other people on board. And I can't wait to get this film underway now. Great.
Well, and as a part of your announcement, you brought on some heavy hitters who are going to help facilitate you guys getting to that next level. Can you speak to that in any way?
As far as the production end of it, you mean, or?
You had a couple gentlemen you had announced who were coming on board that have their level of experience. That are all of it, from the production to the development to just the whole nine of the direction of where you guys are going.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to talk about like Dan Sanchez?
Yeah, that's what.
Me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, they actually, got involved with this as kind of an accident when Joe was calling to get some information about some other things that we were doing, and he was talking to Dan about it, and they started talking. He said, well, what's the project? And he started telling him about the vampire story. And the next thing I know, I'm on a phone call with Dan and Joe, and, you know, I'm describing this whole story to him. And when we got done, Dan was really impressed with the story. He really fell in love with the story. Dan himself is a very creative individual. And he liked the aspects of things that he saw from me creatively. Like, I work models. I did a lot of my own model work for the movies, FX, prosthetics, all that kind of stuff. So he was pretty intrigued with all that. One thing led to another, and it came back that, you know, he really wanted to come on board with this. And Larry got involved the same way. So here I got a guy that, you know, used to run Stars and Lionsgate Films is now, you know, coming on my board for Polestar Pictures. I was flabbergasted.
That's awesome.
I think we all are. Yeah.
Well, again, that goes back to, you know, assembling the team. And, you know, the older I get, you know, when you're younger, you're like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be a star. Or, you know, there are no overnight successes. And it becomes one of those things after a while where you really begin to appreciate the journey. Once you meet your destination, it's cool, but you really begin to appreciate the journey that you've gone through, you and your team have gone through. When you get these kind of developments like this, you know, 5-10 years ago or whatever, you're like, oh, maybe I wasn't cut out for this. But through that toil, through that work, through that perseverance, you now have these developments which, you know, help change the direction of everything you guys have worked for. So don't be afraid to put in the hard work, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and never give up. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
because in this time frame from 2.5 years ago, it's been a roller coaster ride. There were times where I was just like, you know what, I don't do this anymore. But my wife would get on me, and, you know, Mark would slap me upside the head because, what are you talking about? What you're meant to do. So, you know, we'd go on it. But there was a lot of, like, highs. Like, I know at one point in time we were actually talking with Johnny Depp through Jack Wingham's office. And Johnny had seen the script, and he really liked it and wanted to do it. But he had a lot of personal problems going on at that time. Some things were said back and forth. So the project couldn't bring him on. And I was really bummed because we had people that were willing to pay an exorbitant amount of money if he would come on for, you know, a secondary role, and that didn't happen. So I was heartbroken when that all fell through. But looking back at everything, the way that we're producing now and the way that we're driving this movie is not star power, which is an old Hollywood standard. You know, what started before we'll talk to you. Now it's being story driven, which I really like. And the way that it's going to be distributed is even bigger than the old Hollywood standard, which is something that Dan, Joe, Larry, and Mark have all developed. So that's going to be very innovative. And a lot of people are watching us.
Well, and I think more people are starting to gravitate towards, you know, quality over quantity. And I think Hollywood will always be Hollywood, but I think that the bloom has kind of fallen off the rose as far as, for lack of a better term, like you talked about celebrity and the celebrity stars and, you know, A-list celebrities. It's like, you know, people are just kind of like, yeah, all right, that's cool if they're involved. But more people want, like, real stories, real substance. And I think with, you know, me coming from the background, I came and graduate of Columbia College, degree in film and TV production, and worked in production for several years. So, I mean, I've seen the ebb and flow of the industry and how it's changed. And I think more and more things are moving towards, you know, smaller budgets with more substance. And you don't have to have these attachments of XYZ to break your budget. So you can't really make the movie you want because you had to pay for such and such involved. I think more people are getting together. The ubiquitous nature of the technology, the affordability of the technology, and I think better story writers are getting stuff made that more people want to see. That doesn't have to have some star involved.
Yeah, yeah.
I could be wrong.
Well, No, you're right on. There's aspects of the business that have definitely changed and are changing. The way that we view films now are changing. The way we used to view films just kind of went out the window. But throughout the course of history of film, that's always been the gambit. It's always been growing. It's never been in decline. And for the most part, for at least the last 100 years, Hollywood's been depression and recession proof because people will spend their last dollar to go out to the movies to be entertained.
Yeah, that's so true.
And what I've happened recently here, Jeff, is, say an average picture costs, let's say, I'm going to say $25 million. Okay, $25 million for a picture. And then, you have to have an equal amount for distribution costs and promotion. So now you're up to $50 million. And that picture goes out and, you're relying on those box office sales and you don't make it in the box office. You used to be able to fall back on like DVDs and that sort of stuff, which would pick up the rest of the sales. Well, DVDs and Blu-rays and all that, they went the way of the dinosaur also.
Yeah.
So the only way to do it is on some digital platform through some advertising base, and it's very risky. So a lot of the big production companies, are looking at all these factors now.
And it's smart to do so. I mean, I think you're always going to have your Paramount, your whatever, your 20th Century Fox and your big budget pictures, but I think slowly but surely they're starting to realize, is the juice worth the squeeze? And that's another question. I don't know if I brought this up already, but just people's participation. Obviously with COVID, people don't go to the theater as much, but with streaming, and this has been going on for a long time, everybody with their 80-inch screen at home, and I can buy one 6-pack of beer for $8 instead of one beer for $8, and I got the surround sound, and it's what I do. But it's like, again, I think something about the theater experience will always be the theater experience, but that coinciding with Hollywood and the big budget stuff, recognizing that the viewing habits have changed, I wonder where do you think it's all going in the next several years? I mean, again, you're always going to have your Black Adams, which, I don't think it's going to do what they want it to do, but you're always going to have your big budget stuff. But where do you see the whole trend going towards as the viewing habits of everyone is changing?
Boy, if only I was Nostradamus, I could make $1 million right now. I don't know. To be honest with you, I do not know. I see.
But just seeing the viewing, the trends of like, what was it I just saw recently? The new Predator movie with Amber Midthunder.
Right. Yeah. Which
Prey.
I really liked.
Yeah, it was awesome, but that easily could have been in a movie theater, but it wasn't. And now she's the biggest thing in freaking Hollywood right now from a streaming movie, and on Hulu, that's the largest viewed streaming movie ever on that platform. So it's like, obviously the trend is changing.
Yeah, I think, like if you would have been like back in the, I don't know how old you are, but, back in the, let's say the 50s, 60s, and you're going to the drive-in theater, that was all the rage, and all the pictures put out there to get the young kids in with the T&A in them and, the movies. And you thought that wave was going to ride forever because that was like the biggest thing. And look what happened. It became a dinosaur. Now, we just moved into the theater complexes. And then we had, the dollar theaters or the $3 theater.
Yes.
Run theater. So what I'm really honestly seeing is a trend to move theater into the homes, which I hope going out to the theater doesn't go away, because that's always just a grand thing to have happen.
It really is.
But if the theaters can't make money with it, and they're not now, they're losing money because, the production companies take the biggest cut of the ticket sales. That's why you're paying $25 for a thing of popcorn, because they're not making any money off of those films. So if something doesn't happen, that well's going to dry up and that's going to go away. But I do think it's going to be more advertised based. I think there's going to be a lot of companies that are going to be paying big money to have their name associated with the film. publicizing the film through in-home viewing, and I think that's going to pick up a lot of the cost of the actual movie itself.
Interesting.
I think that's one on top of actual sales, through home distribution.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like I said, we've all seen the just overwhelming amount of streaming services, and I find myself, obviously, I sit home and watch movies way more than I actually go to one, and part of that was because of COVID. But I think you're right. Yeah. Nothing's going to ever replace just even walking into a theater, just that kind of olfactory, just the smell of a theater. It's got popcorn. I mean, it's very very nostalgic. But yeah, I think it's very fascinating where we're at now. And I wanted to ask you, going back to kind of what started you out, who are some of the things and individuals and movies that have influenced you, not just obviously in the horror genre, because you're not pigeonholed just behind that, but you're a creative, you're an artistic person. Who's been some of the ones who've influenced you in your filmmaking career?
I get asked this a lot, and this is something people just don't believe when I say it. Nobody. I didn't get into that aspect of watching a movie. Like my good buddy Schultze, who also does like our props and stuff behind the scenes of our films. I mean, that guy can tell you frame for frame what happened in Return of the Living Dead.
That's
who
awesome.
The uncle is, little girl that was killed by the zombie. What the filming day was for that scene. I mean, he's just an encyclopedia of knowledge, and I got into that. I never followed like Star Trek. I never followed Star Wars. I just didn't do that. So I think in that aspect, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing comes from me and not really inspired by. Although I will tell you, Alfred Hitchcock movies have always resonated with me.
There you go.
And I think some of the things I do are definitely in the back of my head with what he would do. Simply looking back on it, I like the idea of not really showing the gore, but anticipating it.
Yes. And that's I'm sorry. That's those subtle nuances are so huge in creating fear between like the music, the editing, and the direction of how you can do that. I think that's actually genius because, going back to, and like I said, nothing wrong with the gore and stuff from back in the day, but that was just almost an overcompensation for the lack of story and substance. But when you can freak people out by doing, less is more kind of thing, I think that's genius in my opinion.
Yeah. A simple, subtle sound of a stabbing, that knife hitting a cabbage, but when you're looking at the big screen and it's going in somebody, but they're actually not showing it, that makes you cringe.
Well, and I think in film school, I could be wrong with this name. It's called a leitmotif. It's basically like a musical signature, and I could just use one example like Jaws. You don't have to see anything. All you need to hear is like, dun. And you're already something's going down. So I mean, I think that's genius for filmmakers to be able to utilize all those kind of tools without, gratuitously, whatever, less is more kind of thing. But no, I think that's fascinating. That's interesting that you say that you're not really, because Anthony Robbins used to say, success leaves clues, and some people like pick up on certain clues as they assemble their own kind of repertoire. But I don't know. I think that's very fascinating. You don't want to be the next this and that. You want to be the first John Rain, which is really cool.
Well, no, I really didn't do it for that reason. It's not like I'm trying to set myself apart because I'm John Rain. It's just that I didn't do that, and I just kind of fell into doing it the way that I should have done it.
Right.
I mean, maybe I should have emulated somebody, because I can tell you my first film that I did was an absolute piece of garbage. I didn't know anything about filmmaking. And when I sat back and looked at it, I was like, wow. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot in the process of that. And I think the other thing that helped me a lot, Jeff, was working in the magic industry, designing illusions.
Yes.
And practical effects. So I took that to my advantage, and I worked a lot of that stuff into the films and it worked. When people say, hey, that's not going to work, and I'd say, yeah, well, because we're going to trick the eye, and then it happened, that was gratifying.
Bro, now that is very interesting that you said that. I did see in my show prep that, obviously in our earlier conversation, you work with Doug Henning and Magic. I think that's very interesting to be able to apply and extrapolate that skill of creating illusions, sleight of hand with the film industry. I didn't even think about that till just now, but I think that's a very, very useful tool to helping to have that kind of attribute to be able to help suspend people's disbelief, if you will.
Yeah, because when I first started my first film was called Dave Oz. Hideous film. Don't look it up. If you do, I'll never talk to you again.
We all had to start somewhere, bro.
Really horrible. I mean, really horrible. It was a takeoff on the Paranormal Activity thing that was really popular back then.
Yeah.
And to make one like that, and I said, well, I don't do a cookie cutter film. I'll do it my own way. And I wrote up the script about this individual whose house was haunted and got his kids out, yada. But I didn't know special effects. I didn't know any of that stuff. So I had to say, okay, well, how are we going to cut his arm off? How are we going to hit him with a hammer? How are we going to, and we had to sit back and figure this all out. The computer was just relatively new back then. The internet was just relatively new.
Oh, for sure.
It wasn't going like it is today. So researching things was a little more difficult. So we just did a lot of things with trial and error, and we accidentally stumbled on things that were actually being used, which was kind of neat. You go back later and the guy would say, oh yeah, that's what we call this gag. And I'd be like, oh, well, we just had some extra duct tape and that's why we did it that way.
Yeah. Well, and again, some of those cheats, can be done in editing, jump cuts and things like that. I mean, that comes down to the, the creativity of the director and the editor, et cetera. But no, I think that's really fascinating, man. I think it's really fascinating. So you do have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah. God, if I had $1 for every time I heard that on set, that term tends to be frowned upon, but it's true though. Oftentimes you can fix it in post.
Right.
So what have we got coming up here? I don't want to keep you forever, but I'm assuming you have more than one project here coming up. What's it look like for John Rain and the crew and Polestar Pictures here coming up for the next several months to years or so?
Well, right now we're moving forward to get a brick and mortar building here in Pennsylvania, and we're trying to move on that before the beginning of the new year. And then we're going to we're planning on shooting around March of 2023 for principal photography. But in the meantime, we've also got the sequel and the prequel that we're working on.
Oh, cool.
That goes with trilogy for Vampire Tenants. So we're working heavily with all that stuff.
How difficult is that? That reminds me of, I think it was Superman, where they're shooting Superman 1 and Superman 2 at the same time. Is that something you're doing, or is it just, are there different kind of things, or are you shooting it all at once knowing you're breaking it up into different parts?
Well, we're writing for the sequel and the prequel. I mean, for the middle. We're kind of like Star Wars, starting in the middle. So we've got that script pretty much locked down, but we know we're still going to tweak it. So we've taken that script and we said, okay, well, we have to add this element for the prequel. How are we going to tie that into here? So we're looking at everything and dissecting it. And we got a really cool guy that's helping us with this stuff too. His name's Harry Sheehanwolf. He's a college, well, he's a retired college professor of history. And he's also an author of quite a few historical books. Cool. And he and I met through Aki Alion. I don't know if you know who Aki is or not. He was the, let me see, he was in with some of them was Chuck Norris, Missing in Action 3. He was the commandant.
That's some of that Golan Golubus stuff back in the day.
Yeah, he's the guy that shot Chuck Norris's girlfriend in that movie.
Oh, okay.
He was also the commandant in Hanoi Hilton. He's a very lustrous career, older gentleman now.
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
anyway,
you posted something about him on your Facebook page. I do remember seeing him. Yeah, that was cool. You guys were hanging out in your living room, I think it was.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal because Akey's sitting on my sofa and we're watching Missing in Action 3. And I put up there, how cool is that I'm sitting here watching Missing in Action 3 with Akey Elliott.
Seriously. That's awesome.
One of my big moments.
No, I'm with you. My little brother, I think I told you a little bit about him. He's my best friend. I call him my little brother. We've been best friends for 40 years. He used to be head of development for the Robert Evans film company. Robert Evans, obviously, Godfather 1, 2, Chinatown. And they had the suite offices out at Paramount, so I went out and visited him and got to hang out in the office. And he's like, hey, come on, I'm sitting there literally hanging out in Bob Evans' office. Rest in peace, my friend. I'm sitting at his desk with all these pictures of everybody around. I'm sitting here drinking his booze, and I'm like, wow, it doesn't get any better. He's like, come on, we got to go to Bob's house. So we literally hopped in his car, drove to Robert Evans' house, and he goes back and has a meeting, and I have a tour from his houseboy, Rio, drinking more of his booze, walking around. I'm like, this is so surreal right now. Like, Godfather 1 and 2 is like my favorite movie ever, and whatever. Yeah. Just hearing the story behind, I was just like, I totally could feel you. Like, this is not happening. I'm literally on the Paramount lot, Robert Evans' office, about to go to his house. It was so cool.
Well, I'm still like a little kid like that. You know, I can remember when I met Leatherface.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because Leatherface 3 was always my favorite Leatherface. So
when I first saw that movie, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it opens up, the first screenshot is August 18th, 1973. And I'm like, holy crap, that's literally my birthday. And I'm like, is this based off real events? It was fascinating. Yeah. But that was definitely a classic.
He had called me up. He had a screenplay that he was writing. He had like 25 pages of notes on it, and he wanted me to come down. This is Ari Mahila, by the way. He wanted me to come down and take a look at it and perhaps help him, finish the script that he had. So my girls were still living with me at the time, and I told them, I said, we're going to go meet Leatherface. And they're like, what? We're going to go meet Leatherface. I was scared until they got there. And R.A. just made him feel so comfortable. He sang my daughter Brandy a song. What was that song? Whiskey and Rye, or what was the name of that?
Chris Stapleton?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's Leatherface singing to my daughter in the restaurant. These are moments that you're never, ever going to forget. It was surreal.
Tennessee Whiskey, I think it was. Tennessee Whiskey. It might be a different one. The song's Tennessee Whiskey from Chris Stapleton. I think you might be.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not sure.
The one. Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. I mean, luckily he was wearing a mask, so it's like you can't really see him, and almost like the Jason people, the people who play Jason or Michael Myers. It's like you don't really recognize him, but when you tell him like, I used to play this person, because my God, that. Like I said, I broke my 15-year-old daughter in over the last several months of like the classics, The Shining, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We just saw the other night, Shining. But it's just like the impact of movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre had. It's just like you can't ever undermine or, just underplay how huge that was to the genre. So next level. Even today, it still just gives me freaking creeps, man.
That's what keeps me going is moments like that, and becoming friends with we're like brothers. I mean, we talk quite a bit. We did a couple of conventions together, and they had all the Leatherfaces at the one convention that we went to. So we got to, he knew everybody, so he's introducing us there. So that was, that was like really cool. Those are moments that I really cherish,
Well, and that's, I think when you I guess stay humble, and I mean, in the industry we're in, it's, not a lot of humility, etc. But some of the relationships that you forge can literally last a very long time, and there are some very cool diamonds in the rough out there. Not everybody are jerks in Hollywood, and you're probably more of a testament than I am as far as meeting people who are just like, wow, this is just a really cool person, and I talk to him all the time, and we have a good relationship. So there's, definitely some cool folks out in the Hollyweird.
Yeah, well, I got to say that about Joe Sabatino. He, here's a guy that worked opposite Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Freeze, in the Batman film. And
what do you mean he worked opposite?
He worked opposite. He was the sidekick for Mr. Freeze.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Yeah. I've got footage of him where I can't remember what his character's name was, so he's probably going to kill me for not remembering. But he was in that movie, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes, I'm familiar.
Yeah.
No matter what people think about those versions of the Batman movies, you have to watch them. They're not, again, they're not Shawshank, or they're not Batman Begins or The Dark Knight Returns, but they're definitely entertaining. If you can go into that with a mindset of like, I'm just going to be entertained by kind of the absurdity of it. I always found those very entertaining, quite frankly. And as an old comic book fan, I look for camp to some degree. That I need to have some bit of campiness. But yeah, that's really cool, man. That's why we're going to hopefully have this conversation again with Joe, because his background is something very, very interesting as well. Tried and true, ridiculous resume, going back a ways as far as his, not only just production side of it, the acting side of it, all of it. And I really wanted to get you guys together, but we made it work with what we're doing here.
He's got such a background, a plethora of movies and, script writing. And he's just like the ultimate Hollywood talented guy that I can't believe that he's with us, because he's that big. He's that big to me.
Well, and it's obviously I would say it's obviously a testament of something you guys have been doing right, because I know he's not going to sign his name onto, some spring chickens who were just, working up the resume. You guys, again, goes back to what I was saying, assembling the right team, and he saw something you guys are doing right, and here you are, man, about to take this bad boy to the next level, and I'm so freaking stoked to see how it happens, man.
Well, like I said in the beginning, I've known Mark for at least 10 years now, maybe more. I don't know.
And his Mark Weiss, his background is in music, if I saw correctly.
Yeah, he's done a lot of really cool, incredible things too, with off-Broadway shows and working with some of the bigger names in music. So when I actually got involved with him with a low-level band that he was working with at the time, and we just hit up a friendship, and we stayed friends that whole time. But he and Joe go way back. They played, I think it's pro football together.
What? Really?
Yeah, and the camps and everything. Yeah, they're both football players. So they've known each other for at least 30 years, maybe longer. So when Mark came on and go, he gave 100% backing to him. And as soon as Mark did that, I knew he was okay. But Joe's more than proved himself as instrumental with the company and just being a really good friend.
Well, and that's so cool. You guys have all put in the work, and like I said, I love a good origin story, and I love those good 30 for 30. I know it's just related to sports, but I love those good documentaries on successful ventures that really get into the foundation of where it started. So hearing your story, Joe's story, Mark's story, and then how it spawned into this cool thing that you guys are building. I always love those kind of stories, man, because it's. I'm not even close to on the level you guys are, but it's I've been in the game long enough, and I know there are so many different opportunities to wave the white flag and be like, nope, this ain't for me. So to see people who have persevered through that for years and years and years, to really not look at things as failures or mistakes, but just opportunities to learn. And then, again, they don't wave the white flag, and then they come out the other end, shining like a new dime. I love seeing that, man. That's why, friending you on Facebook through a mutual friend of ours and just seeing your announcements and seeing where you're going, I really wanted to talk to you, and I definitely am super stoked to see where things are going, man, because you're really, I don't know you, but you seem like a really cool guy. You love your family, and I just loved seeing when good stuff happens to good people.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And the key is staying humble and remembering where you come from, and always try to do that. I know that I am not money driven. That's one thing that I'm not. You think you're going to be able to buy me or impress me with money. That's not going to happen. And one of the things that Joe had told me, he said, that you're the real deal, John. And I didn't get what he meant by that at first, but, he's worked around a lot of Hollywood people. And after I got thinking about it, I was like, oh, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Again.
Yeah, no, this is in heaven, and very, very excited. I know my big thing with Vampire Penance is I wanted to direct it. And, we had some talks about that. So when I get on set, I've got to be able to do this. And at first it came off almost arrogantly off of my behalf. But explaining myself, it was like, this is my first film that I've waited my whole life to do, and I want to have that shot. And they all handed it to me and said, absolutely. And I told them, whatever happens after this, I'm going to be a lot more open. But this big first film, I've got to really have the reins, not to make a pun, on this film. And they've been so helpful and kind to me about all of that.
Well, and that's cool because you're not a spring chicken. You aren't just working up your resume. You recognize that this is the time that you've put in a shit ton of work for, pardon my language, and that you deserve it. You deserve to be able to like I work for this. So again, you've assembled the right team, and that's cool that they don't look at you sideways like, oh, who's this guy thinking he's going to run everything. They know who you are. They know the work you put in, and they trust you with handing the reins over to you. And it's not even just like a one person thing. Crews, all of that, film crews, et cetera. It's such a symbiotic, cohesive, collective relationship. That's, as somebody who started out and as a PA and has done everything from location scout, art direction, learning to appreciate all the different levels of production is so absolutely crucial, because at the end of the day, you really can't do a lot of it without having these seemingly small level people, PAs, et cetera, because it's all, everyone's working together, man. It's all a team effort.
It is. And it's, the director's role, at least the way I see it, is to accumulate the best of the best to put the film together. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm kind of like the ringleader, gathering people together. And I know we talked with Steve Tolan from Tolan FX. He's done Batman Dark Knight Rises. He's done Jack Reacher. He's done all the special effects for those. And he's going to be coming on board with us as soon as we're ready to bring him on. So that's really exciting for me to work with somebody on that level.
That's cool.
Our cinematographer, Wolfgang Meyer, that guy, I can't wait to work with him. We've had many, many talks together. Just won an award for his Moon Garden film that he did. Knows cameras inside and out. He works everything from 35 millimeter up to the mini Alexis cameras. So he's going to really give this a really cool look, and a look that we've talked about.
That's so awesome, man. Again, you've assembled the right team, man. Everything is falling into place for you. My friend, I don't want to keep you much longer. I so appreciate your time, and I really apologize I couldn't get Joe Sabatino on, but we're going to have a follow-up episode here down the line where we can all chop it up. Where can we find out what you're up to, man, and what are some of the things coming on and going on with Polestar Pictures coming up here in the future?
Well, always watch www.polestarpictures.com. We always post things up there. And, of course, through our Facebooks. We have a lot of things going on Facebook. I think I've got like 15,000 followers now on Facebook. So there's a lot of people following us there on top of the 5,000 fans that are with us. And that's constantly growing. So the big thing, watch that, and watch the website. And I think there's going to be some other news articles and stuff that are coming out too.
Very cool. I will post a link to polestarpictures.com and as well as any of your other social networking stuff. John, man, it's so very cool to have made your acquaintance, and really cool to have been able to sat down to chat with you, my friend. I admire your perseverance, your talent, the ability to assemble the right team and to get some really, really cool things going for you guys, man. I'm so looking forward to what you guys are going to be doing here coming up in the near future.
Well, I appreciate that. I also appreciate you. You're a heck of a host.
Well, I appreciate that.
You got a good dialogue going back and forth there. I really, really like it. So yeah, let's do it again when we get Joe on and let Joe tell you everything that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, with all of the stuff you guys have done, I think it's even almost, I don't know, synchronously cool that I only just got one of you, because I could literally, balancing the two of you guys, it's, I'd rather dissect you than maybe him than the two of you, because it's just like there's just so much going on with you two. But it is what it is, and we've made it work today. Unfortunately, we couldn't get Joe on, but like I said, you guys are welcome back anytime as you guys have projects coming up, going down the line to help promote or whatever. I'm more than happy to be here to be your sounding board, my friend.
Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. This has been John Rain from Polestar Pictures, polestarpictures.com. Peace and so much love, you guys. Be easy and take it easy. Enjoy your Halloween today, and so much love. Respect.